Hello humans, welcome to the M-Word podcast, brought to you by Martin, that's me,
And Matt.
that's him. Joined today by Gianni Epifani. Gianni, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Absolute pleasure. So we're going to start with the role you have in Isle of Man sport, or an Isle of Man sport in general, as a conversation before we perhaps dig into your, you wouldn't like to use the word athletic pedigree, but you obviously have an exceedingly large one of them. Pedigree.
Yeah.
You're a sports development officer at Isle of Man Sport.
Well,
Talk about your role.
I have been a sports development officer. That's what I've done really, essentially, for the last 20 odd years. But you've got Man Sport and Recreation, which is the umbrella body. Underneath that, you've got the National Sports Centre, which essentially is a bricks and mortar. Then you've got the sports development unit, which I've been a part of. They're all linked, and they create pathways for young people to get involved in sport, and then hopefully to excel in sport. And then we mentioned excelling in sport. You've got Isle of Man Sport and Sports Aid, which support our elite athletes, which obviously we've been lucky enough to have a lot of those over the years.
Just before we dig into what you're up to now, what brought you into them? What attracted you into this side of
what sport development?
Yeah,
it probably goes right back to my own how I got involved in sport, which was when I was at primary school. Very unremarkable in terms of my involvement in being good at sport, which I wasn't. But like most young people, I think my first sort of thing that I remember about sport was the Moscow Olympics and Seb Cohen and Steve Ovett. So I remember at primary school, every now and then we'd be taken out onto the field, put in a straight line, and we'd have to run from A to B. And every now and then I'd do okay. And it's only that all the rest of football, anything involving skills, was pretty rubbish really. So that sort of stuck out in my mind. That there's a couple of my classmates. They were good at sport, great. They were sort of the best in the class and popular, and those that were just sort of were left to the side really. Used to have in those days the strongest and the fastest would be brought up to the front, and they'd select teams, and generally I'd be the last one to be picked. So that sort of stood out. It wasn't a nice experience. So fast forward to your question, and there's other little steps in between. But when they had the opportunity to become a job in sports development, I wanted to make sure that those group of people which I was part of, I wasn't the fastest or the strongest, still had a good opportunity and a pathway to get involved in sport. And luckily I've had the opportunity, hopefully, to help young people who maybe weren't picked. I think now though, education has moved away, so you don't have the fastest and the strongest at the front and pick the teams. I think it's a little bit more inclusive, but I was involved in setting up the Manchester Games, which is a great opportunity for young people to enjoy sport and be part of sport, and then potentially they've got a pathway in place to go and excel at sport, but essentially enjoy it, and then hopefully they've got the health benefits. There's a lot of people that I see now in the job that I do that have got a poor relationship with sport because of a similar experience that I had when I was at school.
Yeah. It's not necessarily always about competing, is it? In the sense of to be the best or to win. It's all the other benefits that come around that.
Yeah, it's just making sure for me that being active and exercise can be positive. And it might not be football, it might not be netball, it might not be your traditional sport, but there's definitely something out there for everyone to, let's call it their sport, to enjoy sport. If that can start at a young age, it's really for the rest of your life, isn't it? In terms of the benefits of being active and those values that it can bring. If you have a negative experience when you start out, that
like anything,
that can stay with you for your life as well, and that can lead on to health problems, in relation to being inactive.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the basics and to maybe almost look at it structurally in regard to Isle of Man Sport, there's a side of it, and correct me anywhere here, or maybe go through it. There's the side from Isle of Man Sport Liaison, which is about mass participation.
You've got the Sports Liaison Committee who provide grants for sports,
Okay.
More around help with facilities or venues or upgrading facilities, football pitches and rugby clubs.
And that's government funded?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's looking
Well,
primarily...
sorry, it's part of the... it's part of the charity again.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not... Although it's sits in a government facility, Man Sport and Recreation. That funding comes from a charity.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah. So the fundraising element, where's that? Where does that?
Well, I think in terms of where the money comes from, it's part of lottery funding.
Oh, okay.
So it's split. So I think I'm not exact sure of the total amount, but it's split 50-50 between arts and sport, and then Sports Aid have the responsibility of making sure that money is spent wisely. Yeah. So essentially looking after our elite athletes and looking after the grassroots of sport as well. Okay. Alongside the government facilities, which I've mentioned, the National Sports Centre, Sports Development Unit, which is funded by the government and sits under a government department.
Yeah, okay. So just to go back to we've got this mass participation, I call it maybe, but the Isle of Man Sport, and then there's the other side of Sports Aid, which is helping let's call it the more elite people, perhaps looking to make a career out of their sport.
Yeah. So it's creating that pathway. Yeah. So identifying talent is part of it. We've got the Sports Aid Academy, and then nurturing and supporting that talent to become the next Mark Cavendish.
Yeah. So talk a bit about that academy.
Yeah. So again, going back to my experience as a younger athlete, where I feel I didn't make the most of the ability that I had, a little bit, not too much, but I felt like I wasted what I did have, and there's various reasons for that, which we might go into some of them. Having the opportunity to help young athletes, whatever sport they're in, maybe not to make the same mistakes that I made. And be part of that support that's around these young athletes. There's so much knowledge on the island. Not obviously, I'm only a small part of that. But you think about the amount of athletes that we have on the island across a range of sports that have competed at a good level. So for young athletes, having the opportunity to tap into that is really important. And I think Sports Aid Academy has provided
What age
that.
did people start tapping into that academy? Can you start tapping in? What age?
From around, depending on the sport, but around 13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
What sports are involved in that?
I don't think, as long as the sport is recognised by Isle of Man Sport, and there's an association, and there's a local association, and there's a pathway in terms of clubs. Essentially, there's that is the pathway. As long as we've got a governing body that we can work with, and the local association, that we can support the pathway of that athlete. So obviously, you look at British cycling, that's a clear one. The FA, the RFU, you've got your major governing bodies. There's also smaller ones that we work with as well. I think recently we're looking at like powerlifting and sports like that.
Okay,
but as long as there's a pathway and there's a governing body and there's a funding stream, then potentially, well, not potentially, we can work with those athletes.
And that academy, does that then, it's the next level of that Sport Aid?
For some, yeah. I think
obviously
it's interesting because I've been involved now for 9 years, and each year we have a new cohort of young athletes across a range of sports. And the first message that they're told when they're sitting in a room, there's 82 to 90 young people from sort of 14 to 16, that potentially there's one of you will make it as an elite athlete, which sort of that soon gets their attention. But what we can promise as well, the values that you'll learn along the way, you can take into, you want to go to university, you want to, whatever career choice that you're going to make. A lot of what you learn in your time in the Sports Aid Academy is going to put you in good stead in terms of your future life journey. But in terms of out of that group who's going to become an elite athlete and perform at the world level, it's very small. But that's the reality of it.
Yeah. It's interesting thinking about those values you're teaching along the way and the value that's going to provide the individual later in life, whatever they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, a starting point is a good work ethic, which you and understanding what the starting point is. Why do you want to be an elite athlete? I want to go to Olympics. I want to be world champion. It's right saying that. I think it's having an understanding of how strong is your why. But sprouting out of that is some really good values that you can take into other aspects. If you're not going to make it in your chosen sport, which by the time you get to 17, 18, it's probably pretty clear that maybe I'm not going to go to Olympics. So then are you happy to drop down and maybe be happy going to the Island Games or around that level?
Yeah.
And sadly, when it's clear that they're not going to make it at the level they thought they were going to make it, they'll move away from sport and they'll go into their career. But a lot of the values and a lot of things they've learned along the way are going to help them in the next stage of their lives, really.
So when you're saying there about the values and learning that side of it, so very much it's not just you're not just doing funding or giving money. How does what you're saying there, is it more of a coaching side, or what is it that when you're is wrapped up in that developing, should I say?
It's a good question. So I think the term we use now, it's the holistic approach. So you'll learn about the benefits of sleep, strength and conditioning, nutrition, understand physio, the role of looking after yourself. So not just a case of there's some money to help you to go away and compete. In fact, the message that a lot of these young athletes are told is that we're looking to create good senior athletes, good senior performers to go on and compete at the best when they're adults. As a junior, it's learning the key tools that's going to help you to become the best athlete that you can be as an adult. Not always the best juniors go on to become Olympic champions or world champions. There are exceptions, but generally it's those who, a bit like a sponge really, they'll listen and they'll take on things that, okay, I need to listen to him or her. Generally, those types of people are the ones who will go on and excel. In my, from my experience,
of those, say, 80, 90 individuals, I presume that's a yearly intake, for the want of maybe better expression.
Yeah.
And who's putting them forward? Are they putting their hand up? The club's putting them forward?
It's done. The clubs, sports are asked to nominate athletes, competitors, participants who they feel have the potential to become performers in their chosen sport. I think recently as well we've asked schools to put young people forward as well. So it's not just like a self, for want of a better word, it's not like a self-referral, like I put myself forward. You've got to be put forward by your sport, really.
And do IOM Sport end up with 300 names and have to narrow it down, or do they intake everyone? How does the criteria?
I think at the moment, if you put forward, you will become part of that group.
Okay.
What you see quite quickly is self-filtering. So they'll turn up to the first couple of sessions, and they're talking about sleep. And if someone's sitting there thinking, "Well, why are we talking about sleep for?" It's probably quickly they understand. Well, maybe this isn't for me. They can't join the dots. Or why are we talking about strength and conditioning? I'm a shooter. That's my sport. So,
we were talking about Ben Carlin about that a few weeks ago, and the importance of strength and conditioning for shooting. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So if you can't join those dots early on, there's probably a good chance that maybe you're not going to have that mindset of a performance athlete. So you normally find there's 90 at the start. I would say by the time we get to the end, 12 months later, probably looking at 30, 40.
Yeah. So the sports academy ends, you go into more sports aid, where it's more grant orientated, I assume, and it's people getting support to travel, and compete internationally or nationally.
Yeah, you can't lose sight of the fact we live on an island, and that funding to get off the island is really important. But I think the athletes who get the most from sports aid and potentially go on to be the best athletes that they can be, they understand that the support that's offered is just as important as the funding. They've got to work alongside each other. If you just see sports aid as a way of getting funded to go away and compete, it's not a two-way relationship. In my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so we're talking about that structure on the sports aid side. Let's go back to the mass participation side, because most people, that's going to capture most of us in there. So what does that look like in regard to the funding? How does it work? What values you bring into the community in that work?
Well, if we focus on the Max Youth Games, which is an event that I was involved in setting up back in 2002, and then we just had the games last weekend. It was a fantastic spectacle. So what it offers is a way. So you go to school, 5 or 6, and then your first experiences of sport are in a primary school setting, which is great. But then the vehicle to take us along our sport and pathway is a club. So the Manx Youth Games is that it joins is that sort of bridge from sport in a school setting into a club setting. So we try to remove the barriers. We've always had a headline sponsor, which we do now. So it's, in terms of cost, we keep it. I think when we first set it up 20 odd years ago, it was £1 a session. It's still £1 a session. Essentially, you can just turn up. There's no pre-registration. Just make it as easy as possible, as long as it's for your age. So we go around the schools and we do assemblies. We go through each of the sports. Basically, we're trying to sell sport to these young people, and we also mention about the health benefits. About you can aspire to be, go to Olympics. If it's Olympic year, we'll start talking about like Mo Farahs and people like that. You can see that they're quite engaged. But the key to it, which I think I mentioned earlier, is when they turn up to that first session, wherever that might be, is to make sure that it's a positive experience. So your coaches are there, that you've got friendly coaches, the sessions are engaging and they're fun. Because if the fun, there's a good chance you're going to go back the following week. And then it's going to culminate in, for that young person, it's a mini Olympics. So they march onto the track. And for that day, the focus is on them. They're the stars of the show. Then we hope after the Manx Youth Games in May, for that date, that positive experience then is going to say, right, okay, I'll start attending a club session. Or it becomes ingrained. Every week I want to go, can I go to a training session? You get involved in the sport. So for badminton, which has been a Manx Youth Games sport, a lot of their squad players will have started their badminton journey, the Manx Youth Games. A lot of their Island Games players will have started at the Manx Youth Games. So sports are littered with their future stars or their current stars that started the Manx Youth Games, but also it's your volunteers, your young coaches. A lot of them have come from the Manx Youth Games, so they've had that positive experience. And similar to, if you want to make sure that experience is passed on to others, so it's a conveyor belt for performers, for volunteers. It keeps sports going. It keeps the clubs going, really. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but that's where I've gone down.
And what age group is that, the Manx Youth Games?
So we thought that we're not prescriptive. So at the end of the day, the Manx Youth Games is there for sports to develop their sport. So tennis, for example, they focus generally on quite a young age. So that'll be from key stage 2, so 6 to 8 or 6 to 9. Cricket, I think they focus on quite a young age group. Other sports might go school year 6, primary school, so it's a bit older. Okay. So the sports identify where there's areas that they need to develop their sport, and the age groups will reflect that. So each sport essentially has a different age group that they want to focus on, and some sports might just focus on one gender. So for this year, say cricket, for example, they might say, well, let's focus on girls because you need to get more girls playing cricket. So the Manx Youth Games is there for sports to use as a development tool.
And do you, we talked all about a lot of youth and the youth coming through. In regard to Ironman Sport, and let's call it the older generation, what work do they do in the community there?
For adults?
Yeah.
Okay. So there is funding available. It just happened recently, a couple of years ago, in cycling, where you can use funding to appoint a development officer.
Okay.
So as as it says on the tin, it's there to develop the sport, not just for young people, but create opportunities for older competitors as well, or adult competitors.
Yeah.
So that's where that and how sports do that can be unique to the sport, and there's generic ways of doing that as well.
And do they work, if we just talk about general well-being, again, let's talk about adults, but who necessarily aren't super sport-related, but you want to get them into just, not to necessarily, let's say, compete in sport, but get them healthy, get them well-being? Is the programs run just for people who want to engage in sport, but just at a level where it's just about a bit of fitness, a bit about well-being?
I think in general, there's been a shift in that direction. And actually, I think the two sports that I've been involved in for most of my life is running and more recently cycling. The participation numbers have grown considerably. But a lot of those runners that you see in events like the sync work don't go and join athletic clubs. They're just there happy to go out running 3 or 4 times a week. Do the odd challenge, the sync work, and no rest for the wicked is really taken off.
I have interest. Do Ironman Sport offer anything in that space? Do they run, not events, but environments where people can come?
Not specifically, but how they're helping there is often funded for a development officer who then can work with the sport to making sure there's events like the sync work. And more recently in cycling, you've seen a shift more towards sportifs. Where a lot of these riders are riding 3 or 4 times a week, but you won't see them racing. Some of them we can encourage to race, and that's where the role of development officer lies, one of their roles. But there's a place where they just come and do, let's say, they'll focus on doing 1 or 2 sportifs a year, and around that they'll go out and ride the bikes. But quite quickly, I think we're recognising the importance of exercise and the link to our own health, physical and mental health.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about mental well-being, the health. I think the benefits can be found just by a quick Google search and the general research. What's Ironman Sport's sort of vision on that, and what are they doing in that area and promoting?
Well, when you say Ironman Sport, kind of widen that to max sport,
100%.
recreation. Yeah. So I say underneath that, you've got the National Sports Centre where I'm currently based. And my role at the moment is physical activity health manager. So I look after a team that is responsible for the health and well-being of the adult nation, really. So we work specifically with government workers through the Activate scheme. But in terms of the general Ireland population, I like to think we have accessible opportunities at the NSC to come and enjoy sport. I think if you look at the facilities that we've got on the island, it's second to none, really. So we're just trying to make sure that they're, in terms of cost, are accessible in that way. We're not just based at the NSC. We've got activities around the island. We have over 50 classes at the NSC a week. A lot of those are during the day for people who've retired, people who've got health issues and maybe aren't at work and trying to get back to work.
So you might receive referral from doctors there, things like that.
Yeah, so we have a scheme called Healthy for Life, which we work closely with Manx Care. So essentially it's a GP referral scheme. So we're trying to move away from giving medication and using exercise as a medicine, really. So we'd offer surface users a free period of use at the NSC, and then after that there's a subsidised use where they get a 50% membership and a 30% membership. So essentially they're getting 14 months support to look at a lifestyle change, becoming more active, and then soon realising becoming more active, it's affecting their health in a positive way. So we see a lot of people returning to work, but also just having a better outlook in life. Once exercise becomes part of your routine, it makes you more resilient. You know, if you get problems, you can help them to overcome a bit better. Sometimes, though, the hardest bit, as we all know in this room, is starting. It's not a curve that goes goes upwards. It's a rocky road, so you get setbacks, and that's where the schemes that we have in place, like the Healthy for Life and Active for Health, which is another scheme we have again with Max Care, is for people who are struggling with their mental health. They can get referred to the NSC and enjoy exercise as well in a supportive environment. So we're just not offering people a membership to come to the NSC. We're offering them a friendly face, someone who can support and help them make those initial changes to become a more active person.
Yeah, just checking there. I know you mentioned a few schemes. The first one you mentioned there was the Activate scheme. Yeah, is that there where you were talking about just then?
Well, the Activate scheme, there's a lot of actives, so I appreciate that. But the Activate scheme is we work with government departments. It's funded by the respective department, just to encourage the staff to be more active. We also offer advice on lifestyle, nutrition, and sleep. So we feel if we can get them in a better place outside of the workplace through being more active, and offer them opportunities to be more active. It's not just going to the gym. For some people, that's going to work. For a lot of people, you've got to think more outside the box. The benefits are they'll come into the workplace, enjoy being at work more, help them tend to be a bit more productive in the workplace as well, and hopefully reduce sickness as well, which is a cost associated to that. But the way we sell it is if you can get yourself feeling better outside of the workplace, being more active, doing something that you enjoy, potentially that's going to help all aspects of your life.
Does that interact with the private sector at all?
No, at the moment it's just the public sector.
Right. Okay.
So we work with.
It's quite interesting.
Not all government departments, because it's got to be funded by that.
Yeah, so it's a government department.
Yeah. Well, I would say in general, government is putting a strong focus on staff's well-being. Yeah. And my role is the activity and exercise part of that. And you know, it's the thing with exercise. It's so powerful. It's game changing, really, in terms of our health.
And have you seen, with your experience, people through that journey that change? And
100%. You see, going back to having that negative experience at some point, not only at school, because it could be maybe you went to a gym a couple of years ago, and your stereotypical gym, we don't need to paint the picture, it's like quite off-putting and intimidating. I'm not going back there again. So it just, for a period of time, they've been inactive, had a poor relationship with exercise. If we can then turn that relationship into a positive one, I've seen people after 4 to 6 weeks like a different person. Their outlook on life, and on a Sunday night they're thinking, well, how can I get me training on a Monday? It's come embedded into their daily life then, and then from that, the well-being, more energy, and then just all right, they're enjoying being at work, but obviously just enjoying life in general.
Let's just maybe expand a bit, and then that kind of positive conversation. If we think about the community work sport and the community that sport brings, so I think about like the social cohesion that sport brings people from all different backgrounds together. I guess part of what you see is that as well. It's kind of the value it will bring the community. And I think about, I think if you're out running, you're kind of more conscious of the environment you're in, which is, a beautiful place we have here. And you maybe become more socially aware of the importance of the environment and those almost softer impact things. What are there?
If we can get our workforce leaving the cars at home within reason, and walking, cycling, or for some running, it's in everyone's benefit, especially the environment. But a starting point is you've got to get people to value or feel the benefits of walking. Walking is a good starting point for everyone, really. From that, you can then go into running or cycling. So, in terms of the benefits to the community, and a lot of these individuals, because they've got more energy, because they've got a better outlook on life, will start to get involved in more community activities as well.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win for everyone, really.
Maybe end up start volunteering at sports events and getting involved. And
you see that all the time. Yeah. A lot of volunteers get involved because of their children, but once you start feeling and seeing the benefits of exercise yourself, and maybe realising competing isn't for me, but there's a role for me. I can go and help. I can go be a volunteer. I can marshal at events. I think we are seeing more of that, and it's definitely something I think as a sports development officer, I'm not in that role now, I would definitely be tapping into that. There's definitely a shift around the link. More people. It's been a slow movement, but I think it's definitely getting quicker now. People are becoming more active, and we're seeing the benefits of that. But again, there's always going to be setbacks, and it's never a done deal. We also need to be looking at ways that we can encourage people to enjoy being active and making sure it's accessible, it's relatively cheap, and there's a range of activities, and it's island wide as well. So it's never a done deal. We always need to look at improving things.
Yeah, well, that probably brings me on to the comment of when we talk about consistent gains, and just going back to the elite end of the sport and sports aid. So when you're in your experience seeing these elite athletes or want to be elite athletes that are going through the sports aid, you touched on, like, they might get a bit of physio, they might get a bit of strength and conditioning work and support. So outside of that education in the early part of their development, there's then the sports aid, where I assume they then can get support, subsidised support, perhaps at the age of 16, 18, 20, I guess. They're competing off Ireland, they're coming back, they're getting subsidised physio. Is that kind of some ways part of the grant support works?
Yeah, I think as well, I know for speaking to Paul, that they do, it's looking at each individual and what support is going to be of most benefit to that individual to make sure that they can be the best that they can be, or put them on that pathway to that. So what fits one person or one sport, is going to be different. Yeah. For some, the key is funding. There's no way around that. For you to go to the next stage of your career, you need the support financially to go away and compete on a regular basis. For others, it might be a bit of funding, but what's just as important is that support as well. A lot of younger athletes, because of the pressure of being an elite athlete or trying to be an elite athlete, just having that support there is whether it's physio or I think it's with Richard Sill around if you're struggling.
A bit of psychology
as well. So it's different for each person. I think they're going to look at each person and what can we do to help that person be the best that they can be, and put in place the steps to do that. So it's going to be involved in terms of finance. It's always going to be an important part of it, because what I said, because we live on an island. But sometimes when you get to a certain level, that finance is being covered anyway. So you move away from the finance side of things, to those marginal gains then, which I think is mentioned. Well, I know it's mentioned a lot, especially in cycling. Yeah. Psychological support, which you just touched on, the physios, and it's trying to make sure you get to problems before they start. Yeah. So don't wait till you get injured or have got a niggle and then it becomes a problem. It's making sure that support is there. So if you're injured or ill on a regular basis, you're not going to be the best athlete that you can be. So it's making that support, make sure that support is there, and those marginal gains are really important.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that. I think that's provided a great oversight of what IOM Sport does for the community. Perhaps digging in a bit into UG then, which we probably need a SOFA and a psychology test to do. You kindly obviously touched on earlier maybe motivation in regard to the role you have now, and how earlier experiences in your life drove you to try and help provide better experiences for let's call it the youth of today. Maybe talk about your sports journey and sort of headline. Obviously, you're a very accomplished runner earlier in your life. So talk about how you got into actually competing, and I suppose doing all right.
Yeah. Well, I'll try and make it as quick as possible. So pretty unremarkable at primary school, which I've just touched on, and then secondary school. Academically, I struggled as well, but that's so. Without going into the ins and outs, I started my secondary school career, let's call it that, at Ballacomine in the C form. And then within so it was A, B, and C for those who remember. You probably remember, you were a similar age. But so within leaving the first year, so we went to Ballacomine for 3 years. So started in the C form. By the end of the first year, I'd moved up to the A form. And I suppose that offered me a first sort of insight that I did have a bit of resilience. And then if I put my mind to something, I could focus and do quite well, which I did for those 3 years. But so for those 3 years, I was by no means gifted academically, but I tried pretty hard, and I moved into an A form, which I don't think anyone had done at that point. But sport and being active took a back seat completely. So by the time I got to the third year, I probably put a bit of weight on, and being in school is quite a harsh environment, isn't it? So you're looking a bit overweight, but we didn't say it like that. So I thought, okay, I need to do something about this. And the only thing that I'd really enjoyed when I was at primary school was that running, where from A to B. And every now and then when we were at school, especially in the third year, I must have started to grow a bit. When we go and do the cross-country runs, which we were made to do, I started creeping up. So from being at the back of the field, I started to finishing in the first 3. I remember a PE teacher, Robbie Tier, the first time ever in my life anything like this had happened. So you should call you by your surname, Epifani, you could be a good runner. And I'm thinking, someone said I could be good at something, so that was the third year. What I did that summer, I went out to do a bit of running by myself and started looking about me diet and stuff like that, to lose a bit of weight. But also I grew naturally. And I was in Alpha Sports, getting a new pair of trainers. I managed to persuade my mum to get me some trainers. And there's a person in there who had quite an influence on my life, really. He's no longer with us, sadly, was Graham Davies. So he said to me, "Oh, what are you getting these trainers for?" I said, "Well, I do a bit of running." Well, I'm hoping to do a bit of running. So I run a club on a Monday night down Tremode. You're welcome to come. I thought, okay, I might come down. So anyway, about a week later, got me BMX. I lived in Onken, rode down to Tremode, and I was hiding behind the hedge. I could see this group were running around the field, and I thought, well, come on, it's either now or never. You either go and join in, or you just ride home and just continue what you're doing, which is nothing really. So I thought, right, okay. So I turned up and he was there. I said, oh, he remembered me. So we're just doing this training session. You can join in if you want. So I joined in, and then by the end of the training session, he says, well, you're the best one here. That again, the second time in your life, someone said you're really good at something. He said, if you come, there's this race called Foxdale 6. So this was the Monday. I was 14 at the time. The Foxdale 6 was 6 miles. He said, just come to Foxdale on Thursday, and at 7 o'clock there's a race. You're more than welcome. Just join in. So the first challenge was how to get to Foxdale. So I went home and said, well, can I go to this race to my mum and dad? And he got to Foxdale on Thursday night, and we're looking at each other. So how do you get to Foxdale? Honestly, that's the type of conversation. But anyway, we found Foxdale. My mum dropped me off and said, well, you'll be able to get your own way home. I think Graham said I'll organise lift home. So there I was, had my trainers, shorts and T-shirt, managed to somehow work out that I needed a number and pay. So there I am on the start line for this race. And then off we went. So it was a 6-mile race. And the Hope in St John's, you go up that hill, don't you? So it goes up that hill. So I finished, and it must have been about 37 or 38 minutes for 6 miles. But I remember being at the middle of the field or towards the back and seeing the leaders, thinking, God, wouldn't it be great to be at the front of the race? So anyway, a long story short, I finished that race, and Graham Davies was saying, wow, it's amazing for someone of your age to do what you've done. And that's someone giving me a bit of positivity and a bit of encouragement. From that day onwards, the next morning I got up and went out running. Yeah, I suppose
going back to your early comments about that relationship with sport, and if it's a positive one, the impact is I get up the next day and go running. The negative one is forget it.
Yeah, exactly. So quite quickly, I joined Max AC. because Graham was Manx AC. So he started coaching me along with another group of athletes. And then he introduced me to, at the time, with the leading athletes, which are sort of my heroes at the time, which I'd become friends with. And so you had like Chris Quine, Paul Clark, Graham Clark, all tremendous runners. I don't miss any names out, but there was a decent set of runners at that time who were winning races on the island. So I started training with these guys, and I wanted to be where they were. So 1985 was the first time I ran the Foxdale 6. By 1987, I think I finished third as a 17-year-old. So quite quickly, I'd improved. Up until 1991, I went to the Island Games and I medalled. Right. So sport had given me an identity. I come from being a shy young person. I had a bit of stuff, so I didn't like to talk that much. I'd sort of be at the back. I'm still quite shy, really, but what it did, it give you an identity. So all of a sudden, I was good at something. But then, so I went to the Island Games in 1991, and I ran at that time. I ran my PBs, and I never ran any faster. So what it was, I found something I was good at, a bit of an identity. The problem was then, at that time, the refuelling habits were, after a race, you go for a drink. After a training session, you go for a drink. And then, sadly, the next bit that gave me a bit of confidence was alcohol, which I don't really mix. So quite quickly, I was still running, but the benchmark was there. I think now you've got like Sir Dave Malarkey running, world-class times. And Ollie Lockley and Alan Corlett. So if you as a young athlete now, if you want to get to where they are, there's no way you can go out drinking at the weekends. You've got to dedicate your whole life to try and be the best athlete you can. At that time,
do you regret that now?
Pardon?
Do you regret that now?
And that's why I was keen to get involved in Sports Aid Academy, because I think if that was around when I was a young athlete, I'm not saying I would have gone to the Olympics, but I would have been a far better athlete than what I was. So I do regret it. But you get into the see, on the Isle of Man, you're a big fish in a small pond. So I became happy with just having my name on the back of the Manx Independent and doing the local races. I thought it was great that I could get drunk at the weekend and then win races as well. But looking back on it now, it was stupid, really. But that's, if I'd had that support or that, that holistic approach that's in place now, I'm hoping I would have had the right people around me to maybe make some better choices. But I'm not blaming anybody. It's just I made the choices at the end of the day.
I was just going to say then, if looking back and listening to that early part of your life, then what would you think about? Like, what was driving you at that point? Because you mentioned in your academics there, you went from C to A. So there's some kind of, is that competitiveness? Is that bettering yourself? Is there, and I'm interested when you then talk about your sports side, then that recognition. I'm just interested in what's driving you at that point, because again, you've shown on the academic side that, and you kind of didn't get it, but let's say in terms of the recognition, let's say the identity, maybe you were rightly looking for, and then you start the sport and suddenly you get it, and that sounds like, oh, that was a good fix for you there, that you've got an identity, you've got something you're enjoying as well, and that's kind of took you, as you said, on this trajectory. Now, I'm just interested, what was the driving force there that started that?
I think going back to talk about Sports Aid Academy, the first thing we talk about when you go to your first session is understanding your why you're doing it. So going back to, I would never ask that question. So I think a lot of it was that identify I am good at something. Getting recognised with your picture in the paper. As a young teenager, people pointing out, oh yeah, you Gianni Epifani, weren't you? But that's not a strong enough why to become, going to sort of become like a national champion or going to Commonwealth Games. But once I went to the Ireland Games and I medalled there, I thought I'd made it really. But the reality of it was that should have been the starting point. If that had been pointed out to me, that this is your starting point, you've still got a long way to go.
And you need to be doing A, B, and C, and not doing D and F.
And I think now you've got your role models. Not to say that the athletes at the time weren't good role models. They were. Go back, it was I made the wrong decisions. It was not nothing. Okay, maybe you could surround yourself by different people. But now the benchmark is being made higher. So along the way there, you've got likes of Keith Gerrard, who won the national cross country and went to the European Championships. Going back to 2003, I ran the national cross country and I finished 139th. At that point, that was the best position a local athlete had ever finished. I think Keith Gerrard ran that day and he was 4th in the juniors or in the youths. Fast forward 9 years later, he won it in Parliament Hill. So that's how the benchmark had increased. So rather than just going to regional championships and making the final or competing at national level, we had athletes that were winning at national level and getting picked for Great Britain. So now, as a young athlete, if you want to be the Ireland's number one or get to Commonwealth Games or further than that, they're your role models. And you've got to do the A, B's and C's, and you've got to live the lifestyle, and you've got to, it's that whole approach. Going out the weekends drinking is maybe you can do it on the off season for a couple of weekends, and that's it. But
and obviously you're still very sporty now. Ride the bike a lot.
Yeah, so it moved from being a performance athlete to really using it as a medicine, really. So. It's got me out of a few sticky situations where if you continue going out drinking every weekend, it's not going to end that well, is it? And start having the odd cigarette and stuff like that. So then what I do then is binge train. So then I wouldn't go out for a few weeks. I'd go and train really hard for a month and then get injured. I wonder why.
And is that not long after the games then, where you said you've gone away and medalled?
Yeah.
What is that?
So that was in 1991, and in 1992 I ran my PBs for 5k and 1500 metres, which for what's going on now, around 40 and 43 for 5k and 352 for 1500 metres, which is nowhere now. But at the time, it's probably one of the fastest times in Ireland, a local athlete had ever run, and around 154 for 800. But really, my future help was in the longer distances, which I never made because. By that point, my running career was over.
Oh, I was going to say, because you've just done the Ireland Games then.
I did go to other Ireland Games and medal, but...
Then, was there a pathway to be, or in your mind, Commonwealth, or that next step was...
There was, yeah. And I should have took advantage of that, but I didn't. For some reason, I was convincing myself it was fine to go out and drink every weekend and do the odd race and train. But the reality of it is, I think I'll do it next year. And that next year never comes. It's gone. But I'd always enjoyed running. I still enjoy running. I enjoy cycling, and it's something that helps me in terms of my well-being.
Yeah. So I want to touch on. I think we're well known through sport. You exercise a lot. Is that your medicine? Is it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Which I think it is for a lot of us. So I've gone from thinking like a performance athlete, not for very long, to then using sport as a medicine and to help me when things get tough in life. Sport's always been there to help me.
Yeah.
And training.
Yeah, no, I agree. So let's talk then. Lastly, that's okay. A couple of years ago, 18 months ago, you felt pretty ill. Maybe just talk. Holistic or high level, you fell ill, how'd that happen? And I guess there was a struggle there because you couldn't exercise either, let alone maybe even get out of bed, and how you were through that journey.
That all happened in the space of 24 hours really. It was beginning January 2023. I was on away to run the Lancashire cross country, but we'd gone away early with my wife and my daughter, as we always do, have a bit of a holiday at the beginning of the year. Just in the room, in the hotel room, and I noticed there was a rash on my leg, and then sort of within hours, my sort of legs had swollen up. But at that point, though, I felt okay.
I'm still running tomorrow.
But I was still hoping to run, yeah, of course.
Standard athlete.
And then, but then I went to Boots, said, just can I get some cream? So I said to the lady, got some cream, I got this rash. And I could tell by her reaction on her face that she sort of went like that. She said, oh, you need to go to hospital now. And I'm like, what's something from your rash, to be honest. She said, no, you need to go to hospital now. So we did. And sort of 12 hours, I was in A&E, and things deteriorated quite quickly. Within that month, I ended up with a disease called IgA vasculitis, which is quite a rare disease. Why I got it, I don't know. I'll never know. Just unlucky. It's really rare, but it attacks your organs, and for me, it attacked me kidneys. If it attacked me heart, I wouldn't be now talking to you. So one way I was lucky. So my kidney function dropped significantly, to the point where we're talking about dialysis or transplant. Or there's another option to have this treatment, a chemotherapy treatment. So as soon as you mentioned that, I said to them, I've got cancer. I know I haven't got a cancer, but chemo can be treated for a lot of diseases. So I says, yeah, I'll go for that. I said, it might not work. In 6 years' time, you might not be here, or you'd be transplant or dialysis, but you can't be on dialysis the rest of your life. So I thought, okay.
So how long after let's say, going to hospital, is this conversation happening?
About
days,
4
weeks?
weeks.
Oh, okay.
4 weeks. But it's interesting because when he said about transplant, the first thing I did when I got home was look at the transplant games. So I think if I needed a kidney transplant, hopefully I'd make a recovery, or as best recovery as I can, and then they have games for people who've had. So that's the way. Even then, I was thinking about, okay, that's not a positive situation, isn't it? But I always thought from the onset of getting ill, there's always people that are worse off than you. So anyway, I started this treatment. So every 3 weeks you go up and you basically get this injection, this stuff put into my body. I wasn't totally understand the whole process, but anyway, so my kidney function went from 22, which is nearly stage 5 kidney disease. Within about a couple of months, it gone up to 40 or 50, which is stage 2 or 3 kidney disease, which is manageable. You're moving away from dialysis and transplant, where you can manage that. So so exercise was an important part of that. I remember the first time I went for the treatment, I tried to run. I could run for 50 metres. I had to stop, walking to the hospital car park, looking around thinking, God, this is embarrassing. But anyway, I was so out of breath. So I got my treatment. 3 weeks later, I managed to run for 150 metres without being out of breath, and that was a win. So that was in the February. So each week I was getting a little bit stronger, and then that coincided with my kidney function starting to go back up. So when I finished the treatment in August, I did the Ledans, but only as part of a team. So that was my first competitive out, because I was told back in January you'll never compete, you'll never be able to do competitive sport again.
Interesting.
So I thought, well, okay. So I thought, right.
So in those first 4 weeks before, say, the diagnosis, you've been told you can't do sport. What's your head like at this stage?
It was okay, if I'm being honest. I just thought to myself, well, if I can't, I'll just get myself as well as I can, whatever that looks like. If that means I can go out walking every day, or I can do a bit of jogging. If I can't compete, I can't compete. I thought, the way I looked at it was, I've been quite lucky. I've competed for 30 years. All right, I had some regrets about stuff we've just spoken about, but in some ways I've been lucky the most. So I looked at it that way, really. If I could get back to any sort of fitness, I'd see that as a bonus. But essentially, you want to be well enough. I've got a daughter, I've got a wife, I've got kids. You want to, obviously, there's sometimes sport has to take a back seat, and they become the priority then. Your family.
Where's your health now, a year on from that?
Touch wood. I did a FTP last night, and 320 watts. So I'm creeping back up. This time last year, I probably would have struggled to do 180 watts.
Yeah, right.
So it's going in the right direction. But it's been bite-sized chunks, and I would say everything I've learned since doing that Foxdale 6 in 1985 probably equipped me quite well to deal with the illness, really, because it's been a bit of a rocky road, you know.
And my final question, you mentioned like earlier on about building resilience and just listening to the kind of that tail end of that story around. So there's that positive outlook of, I've got a setback here, but I need an objective down the road, which might be, if it's a new kidney, I can go to the transplant games. That positivity mindset you have, is that born from your childhood? Were your parents still that? Or do you think that's just you built that up through doing sport all your life? Where do you think that comes from?
I think probably comes from my parents, both. Don't really. I had quite a strict upbringing, which is, looking back on it, it was a good. You don't realise that at the time. It's not until you're older that gives you, you know, your strong work ethic and your strong values. So there's a bit of that as a starting point. And I think it's just quite a few setbacks. So I wasn't that clever at school. I wasn't that great at sport. I've always had to overcome things and
build your resilience.
Yeah, building resilience. So yeah, it's been built up over 30, 40 years, and when I really needed it, it was there to tap into. So I can thank sport for that, really.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Good. Great. All right. Real good insight. I mean, we've known each other for years, but a lot of that I didn't know about you, so it's good to peel back the onion.
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Gianni, or G, as we better know.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Okay, thanks for your time.
Pleasure. It's word out from Martin.
Word out from Matt.